reinforcement training. So Tolma gets to decide whether or not he wants to participate in the training session, and if he does, he gets a reward. If he doesn't, no problem. He just simply doesn't get that coveted reward. Now, Chris uses little pieces of steak to entice him, but sometimes even delicious steak is not enough for the bobcat to come out. We'll see what happens as he's standing back here. Some of you guys can see him, some of you can't, but for those of you who have seen a bobcat, this is probably about all you've ever seen. Maybe the tips of some ears, the top part of a face, hidden somewhere in the deep brush. That's about the best we could ever hope for. These animals are not the largest predators in North America. They are far from it. And there are many animals that might want to make him into lunch. And so he tends to stay hidden deep in the tall grass, in the thick brush, wherever it is that he feels he's going to be safest. Now you might notice that he's got that tiny little tail, that bob's tail, and that's where he gets his name, bobcat. Now they do have a naturally bobbed tail. It does not grow long. It is not useful for running across long distances like a runner using it like a cheetah chasing down some animal 60 miles an hour. Instead, he probably likes to sneak up really close to his prey, catch it within 1 or 2 bounds, and if that's not enough, he's not going to go after any further. Now, Tolma, like all other cats, are carnivorous animals. You know, they don't eat other things. They don't eat grasses. They might chew on some grasses on occasion, sometimes to help themselves vomit, but generally speaking, he's only going to be eating meat products of all sorts of different things. Now, bobcats are generalized predators. They'll go after anything they can overpower, from waterfowl during the breeding and nesting seasons to small mammals and lizards and snakes during the rest of the year, and potentially, especially during harsh winters or when animals are plentiful, they might go after things as large as deer. So this 30-pound bobcat here might be able to take down even a fairly large deer. They are formidable little predators. Now, Tolma is an animal that you might notice has little white spots behind his ears, and that's a really good indicator that he is hunted by a lot of larger, potentially hunted by a lot of other animals. Those little spots in his ears probably work like eye spots, and they help to deter predators from coming after him, because animals coming from behind are going to see those spots and think that maybe he's looking at them to give him that little bit of an advantage so they don't come after him. Well, he's done a pretty good job being a little bit stubborn, but that's okay. He's going to head back inside after he finishes all of his meat to make room for another animal guest. So that was Tolma, our bobcat.
Tolma. All right, well, coming up next we have yet another predator, another carnivorous animal. Of course, we have a snake. This is a ball python. His name is Monty. Now, these snakes come from Africa. And, well, they're called a ball python because they sort of roll up into a ball, making them kind of, well, they camouflage very well, but it makes it a little larger to eat for a potential predator. But, you know, snakes are really fascinating animals. They have some pretty impressive adaptations to help them locate, catch, and kill their prey. One thing, as you might notice here, as Monty passes by you in front, he's flicking out his little forked tongue at you, little pink tongue. He's not being rude. He's simply picking up scent particles out of the air. In essence, he's kind of tasting the air. He picks up those scent particles, withdraws that forked tongue. He has a very specialized organ in the roof of his mouth, which he uses with that forked tongue, so he can tell if he's smelling something on the left or on the right, potentially prey, and potentially his next meal. Now, it's a great sense of smell. His eyesight, okay. But one thing he lacks, though, as far as senses go, is hearing. He cannot hear sound through the air the way we do. He lacks ears. He has the same bones as we have in our ears, but they're simply connected to their lower jaw, which allows the snake to pick up vibrations on the ground. If he's resting on the ground, resting in a tree, he can pick up vibrations. And he might pick up the scent of an animal, but he doesn't know if that animal's too large to eat. Typically, a snake will not try to strike at something that's larger around than they are. Of course, if you harass a snake, if you bother a snake, he's going to strike to defend itself. But as far as feeding goes, he's only going to strike at something that fits in his stomach. You can see Monty here is about this big around, so he can easily eat, a small to medium-sized rat or a large mouse. Rodents around those size. Snakes feed on other snakes, sometimes birds, sometimes bird eggs, but they do really have a appreciation and a taste for mammals. So he picks up that smell. He doesn't pick up big, heavy footsteps. He's not going to pursue his prey, though. He can't really move that quickly. He can't chase after his prey. He's waiting for that prey to come to him. So he'll wait in the grasses, maybe along the game trail, a spot that's frequented by other animals. And when that animal comes close enough, he's going to strike out. He might have upwards of 100 or more very, very sharp teeth, which are all curved and face back into his throat. He'll seize that animal and then wrap his body around it and start to constrict or squeeze, because he's a constrictor. He's not a venomous snake. Venomous snakes have those hollow fangs which they use to inject venom into their prey. Well, this guy kills his prey by squeezing. And every time that animal exhales or breathes out, he squeezes just a bit tighter. That continues until the animal stops breathing. It cuts off oxygen to their lungs or to their vital organs, and the animal dies. And then he can swallow his meal, but you'll notice again, Monty has a fairly small head compared to the rest of his body. How will he get an animal that fits here into that fairly small mouth of his? Well, that lies in the special jaw bones of a snake. Now, you know, you've got a single piece jawbone here. Well, theirs are actually split in two down the middle. It's connected in the center by a stretchy tissue, which allows the two jaw bones to spread wide. They're also connected to their skull, also with stretchy tissue, which allows the bones to move down independently. So they'll swallow their meal whole, usually head first. They don't chew. Those teeth are not designed for chewing, but they're designed to guide that prey item down into their throat. And you know, he'll swallow it fairly quickly, he'll digest it, and he might actually have to go for many weeks, possibly even months, until he encounters his next meal. So snakes can go a long time without eating. You know, Monty here gets fed every couple of weeks. He gets 5 good-sized mice, and then we give him a week off after that, so it gives him an opportunity to digest, but pretty good setup for him. Now, another thing about the snake, too, and another way he can pick up traces of his next meal, he has heat-sensing pits along his upper lip, along his upper jawline. That allows a snake like this to pick up the heat given off by warm-blooded animals, kind of like us, or, again, potentially his next meal. That also gives him the ability to maybe do some hunting at night, too. So again, heat-sensing pits are pretty handy to have when you're hunting you're hunting for your lunch. So, one thing about snakes, though, they're really important animals out in nature. You know, people have a lot of people have a fear of snakes because they are very unusual. You know, they're not something that's, you know, something that people always relate to. Because of that, well, they face a lot of challenges in nature. People see snakes. What do? They'll try to beat it with a stick, or some people might try to kill a snake for no good reason at all. They're simply out there doing their job. So if you happen to encounter a snake out, or if you're out for a walk in the woods or out for a walk in the park and see a snake, the best thing you can do is just leave it alone. It's only doing its job, basically keeping our rodent population down, because if we didn't have snakes like these guys, well, we'd be overrun with rodents. So I'm going to bring Monty back because we have more animals to come. So again, this is Monty, our ball python.
All right, thanks, Mike and Monty. We are going to head back to North America. Another animal that might come from your own backyard. This cute little owl is Sapphire, and she is a burrowing owl. And she is an animal that comes from all across the southern and western portions of the United States. There are burrowing owls that live down in the southeast, as well as all throughout the southwest. They are very common here in California, especially throughout the Central Valley. Now, these little owls, this is as big as she is ever going to get, are really important and really interesting animals. Now, when we think of owls, we always think of nocturnal animals, right? The great horned owl, all those other owls out there pretty much all come out in the middle of the night. They come out, they hunt all sorts of small mammal prey all night long. Well, Sapphire, she is not that way. She is actually a diurnal or daytime animal. She comes out all day long with her family hunting for lots of small animals. They live in mostly undisturbed grasslands where there's going to be a lot of burrows that they help excavate themselves, but especially that they take over from other animals. Burrowing owls rely on lots of small burrowing, mostly mammals, but also some other types of animals in order to make their homes. Ground squirrels, groundhogs, all sorts of other small animals like that are going to make burrows that they don't live in their whole lives. They leave those burrows eventually, find some other place to go, and these little animals here move in immediately afterwards. Now, they lay their eggs in those burrows, they raise their young in those burrows, they spend a lot of time down there hiding away from predators and making sure to stay safe, as well as giving them a nice little home base to find their food at. Now, burrowing owls, being very small, are not going to be hunting large prey items. The biggest thing this little owl is probably going to catch is a very small field mouse or a small mole. A large portion of their diet is actually made up of insects. So they will go after all sorts of various flying insects, from grasshoppers to dragonflies, to anything else they can catch. But one of their things that they will actually do is they will lure animals to them. They'll wander around the grasslands looking for the poop of other animals. Coyotes, raccoons, various other kinds of usually mammals. They'll take that poop and drag it somewhere near their burrow. And then they'll sit and they'll wait. And of course, what does poop attract? All sorts of small insects, beetles, flies, bees, and wasps. And when those animals come to feed on that poo, the burrowing owls run out and grab their next little snack. Now they have nice sharp claws, very strong talons on their feet, and a nice big hooked sharp beak for cutting their food into bite-sized pieces. Now, unlike most birds of prey, the burrowing owl is actually a very social animal. They live in small to even medium-sized family groups, usually with a mother and father and up to a couple of clutches of their offspring living together in one or a series of burrows near one another. You can oftentimes tell males apart because males, even though they look almost identical, will usually stand sentry. So the old father of the group, he'll sit up on top of maybe a fence post, he'll sit on top of the burrow, he might sit on a near bush or tree up in the sun, always on the lookout. So he's always getting sun bleached, whereas the others spend a lot of time underground. And he's the sentry, he's always looking out. When they see predators, they have a large variety of different kinds of vocalizations to let the group know what's around them. And they'll even defend their burrow by pretending to be rattlesnakes, even though more or less the burrowing owl is pretty much harmless, unless you were a very small animal. If something like a coyote, a badger, a fox, a bobcat were to come around their burrow, they would all retreat deep down underground, they flare out their wings, they sort of dance back and forth, and they make a hissing, shaking sound that sounds just like a rattlesnake shaking its tail. So that tends to scare away most predators, because even an animal like a coyote, a hungry coyote, is going to think twice before sticking his nose blindly into a hole that might have a rattlesnake in it. So a really good defense for these little animals. Now, she is really cute, you guys, but she is definitely not the last animal that we have for you. So I'll take her inside to make room for our next guest. This was Sapphire, our burrowing owl.
They're not gonna do
All right, now we're going to go to Africa to see the rare and endangered blue towel. Exciting, huh? There's actually something in the towel. She is a nocturnal creature, so she's normally sleeping now, but she has a day job here at the zoo. This is Calico, and she is an African pygmy hedgehog. Now, they're called African because they live in Africa, and they're called a pygmy because this is her full size. She will not get any larger. And there is other hedgehogs found in the world, like over in Europe, but they're about 3 times her size and much browner in color. Now, these guys, like I said, are nocturnal, so she would normally be sleeping now and come out at the nighttime because it's a little safer for her, and then also it might be a little easier to find her food. So these guys would have a little bit better camouflage than she does. She has a lot of white on her, but typically they're a little bit browner, so they have more brown like at the front, all over their body, but she has kind of some pure white patches there, and that's how she got the name Calico, because it's kind of like calico coloring. And then she has some great adaptations to help her avoid being eaten and also to find her food, which is bugs, insects, fruits and vegetables and stuff. And so first off, check out those ears. She has really big ears on that little head of hers. And so she has great hearing to hear those things moving around. She has whiskers to help her feel her way around. And she has a nose that sniffs out stuff. And she loves